This is the Aces Up Your Sleeve podcast, and we're the Aces Up Your Sleeve in relationships, from romantic to workplace, parental to platonic, your relationship with yourself, and everything in between. Let us, two autistic, aspect, kinky therapists, be your secret weapon in neurodivergent life.
And here's your disclaimer. This is not therapy or therapeutic advice, and we're not on the clock. What you'll hear are our thoughts on different topics, what we might do in your shoes, and how we've supported others through similar situations.
Hello and welcome to the Aces Up Your Sleeve podcast. I'm your host, Cade.
And I'm your host, Sabrina.
And today we're talking about autistic and neurodivergent celebrities. We're also going to hopefully cover the importance of representation, because that is something we both platform quite a bit when we're doing trainings and talking to colleagues and clients.
Yeah, it's really important and unfortunately sparse in some ways.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, we'll probably talk about things like this, but when I get parents of clients and I'm trying to explain to them, like, hey, your kid is autistic, here's what that means, it's really hard, and especially in the past, it was really hard to be like, hey, there are happy autistic adults, there are successful autistic adults, and however they define success, when my only examples I could give were like Anthony Hopkins from Silence of the Lambs. Do you know him, parents? He's successful and kind of happy, I think.
Is the actor or the
actor?
Okay.
I mean, probably the character as well, but the actor for sure, yeah. But then he goes on to say some like, well, it's actually Asperger's and da-da-da, you know, so you don't really want parents reading his stuff. And then Dan Aykroyd from SNL, who I believe struggled with substance use for a really long time. And Ghostbusters, of course, he did Ghostbusters, which canonically, I would assume in the canon, they're all autistic. But there's also, who is he? Oh, and of course, Temple Grandin.
Yeah, although is she famous enough that like a random parent off the street would know? Like, I do know that she's talked about in like school settings, which I had never heard of her until I like entered into the autism spaces as a professional.
She is very big with parents who have some awareness of autism. So if they've ever donated to Autism Speaks, or have, you know, I've got a cousin who has a kid with autism, and so we know about Temple Grandin and how great she is.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Which, when you get more into the autistic community, for listeners who don't know, she said a lot of very problematic things and has some beliefs that are pretty harmful to autistic people, especially autistic people with higher support needs.
Yeah, I like, so my best friend growing up had 2 autistic siblings, but like it was weird and we were young and we like didn't really know all the stuff, and so like outside of that, I think the most that I like knew in terms of representation was like fucking Big Bang Theory, which isn't even actually representation because they're not. And then in Community, Abed, right, and like the closest that they ever get to saying that he's autistic is the like on the spectrum, none of your business line in one of the Christmas episodes, and so like that was pretty much it. And I was like pretty well into like teenagerhood, early adulthood when some of that came out. So.
Oh, same. Yeah, definitely did not know about that as a kid or a middle schooler. And I had also an autistic friend who was formally diagnosed and just, had no clue what that meant. I don't, like, I've never even seen Rain Man, which is the other thing parents, especially of older generations, usually know. Never even seen that, but I know enough to know not to recommend that either.
Yeah, or What's Eating Gilbert Grape, when
I've never seen that either.
Leonardo DiCaprio tries acts. Oh god, just a mess. A lot of allistic actors playing autistic characters, and yeah.
Well,
but yeah,
our first, I was gonna say, our first question is, when you were younger, who did you look up to as autistic role models or celebrities? That's tough.
Yeah, I think we were talking about it a little bit before we hopped on, of like, it is also hard because neither one of us were identified early in life, right? And so I don't know that we were seeking it out. I don't know if we sought it out, it would have been there. Like I was a child in the early 2000s and a teen in the mid 2000s and early 2010s, and I don't know that there was much.
No, I graduated in 2009, and I mean, one, I didn't know to look for it or really what it meant or was, but secondly, I don't think anybody was talking about it like that.
Yeah.
But I will say, a lot of the celebrities that I gravitated towards and had like some hyper focus or special interest related to, some of them passed away, like Prince and Kurt Cobain. We'll never know.
Yeah.
We'll never know, but we could maybe take a guess, you know? And then celebrities like there was a time frame where I was like, let me like lean really hard into femininity and just see like, can I do this at all? So Paris Hilton, some of the like Hugh Hefner, Playboy Bunny girlfriends, who now, like Holly Madison, one of those ladies, she is openly autistic, and Paris goes and talks about how she's an ADHDer, and a lot of the comedians I used to be really into, like Mitch Hedberg, also has passed away, but his jokes are so literal and like, yeah.
Hold on, now I have to look him up, because if he's who I think, I fucking loved him. Last name?
He's like the
Hedberg. Yes, he's the one with one of my favorite fucking jokes ever about how like when you're wearing a backpack and like a turtleneck, it feels like you're being choked out by like a person on your back, and that is exactly how I feel all the time, which has nothing to do with autism, but yeah.
But no, so many of his insights and jokes and like some of his bits on like receipts and why do we need them, just the absurdity of like holistic society and the societal norms. Everybody is capable of doing that, but I do think when that is the bulk, if not exclusively all of your comedic work is focused on that,
yeah,
you know,
yeah, it's interesting. I also was super into him. I think it's less for me about like who I was looking up to when I was young, because again, like I was just didn't know, and I was caught up in a lot of other kinds of things, like all this stuff with America's Next Top Model is happening right now, right? Because the documentary came out, and I was talking to a friend about how like we would sit outside of our elementary school and like talk about like, oh, did you see last night's episode, like and like what that did, especially because I had like a lot of growth spurts really young, and so like I was head and shoulders bigger than everyone in my class. I wasn't looking back at photos, like I've been looking back at old photos of me as like a teen and a kid. I was not fat, but like up until I sat down and looked at those photos, you wouldn't have been able to convince me that I was not a fat teenager and child. But I was bigger than everyone else around me. And so like a lot of what I was watching just wasn't really about like role models and things like that. I think once I started going on my autistic journey, it was more, okay, this is like, what am I finding? And so like, you know, early on it was the like, oh hell yeah, like Lilo from Lilo and Stitch is very autistic coded. And more so finding like autistic coded characters. There was a character in Degrassi who had Asperger's.
Never seen that one.
You know, it's just nobody should have watched Degrassi. God, that show. But like, he was like a black kid too, which was kind of cool. Like now thinking about it. But yeah, there
especially
was
for that time frame. That's cool. That's cool.
Yeah, like it was like probably like mid 2010s, like early 2010s when that was out. Yeah, because he was like not part of the first group of the thing. He was like part of the next one, but Degrassi ran for so long for no reason. But yeah, I think I was really like looking up to like autistic role models more in person, and then unfortunately there have been some like autistic celebrities who have really let the community down in some ways, right? So yeah, it's been an interesting. It's hard because like even now there's just not. It doesn't feel like there's that many out there, and especially when it
Yeah.
comes to autistic folks representing autistic folks in media.
Yeah.
You know, versus like an autistic person playing an autistic person.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm with you too on like as I look back at what I was drawn to in shows and stuff, I can easily pick out like, oh, that character has a lot of autistic qualities, even though they never say that they're autistic. Definitely community with Abed, but also like yeah, a lot of the cartoons I used to watch as a kid. Now looking at like Bob's Burgers, I think they have explicitly said it now, at least about Tina and Bob's Burgers.
Well, because so they have an episode in like season 1, and season 1 of Bob's Burgers is trash. But because they're still trying to kind of be Family Guy too much, they
Oh,
didn't quite like settle into there. And so they have that episode with like it's a really viral clip now where Tina's talking about something and she like drops or she's talking about something and she's like, "Oh, I don't want to have to do it. Like what if they're I don't want to have to go over there. What if they're pedophiles?" And then Gina's like, "Well, I don't want to do it." And Louise is like, "Well, you're the autistic one or the artistic one." Like there's like a confusion in the word there. And then someone drops a bunch of toothpicks on the ground and they're like, "Count them." And Tina goes, 40. And there's like 3 of them. And
oh,
it's just like a a kind of funny mockery, but it is interesting that like that's where they started and they're really far away from that as a whole. Like they're not in that kind of like mean mockery place anymore. But that like the characters have grown more and more to represent some like neurodivergencies.
Yeah, it's cool to see the growth there, and I think in a more recent season they've alluded to it again, if not outright said it. So it's neat that they've kept some of the threads, and yeah. And
Yeah.
same with like, Power Rangers was one of my first special interests, and when they did the remake, the Blue Ranger is autistic. He's also black,
Ooh.
and I was like, I love the Blue Ranger, and yeah, that's just very cool to see some of that like full circle. And I like when the creators will say this
Outright.
is an autistic character. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I will say it feels like it's happening more and more now, which is nice. Like I know there's an
Yeah.
autistic Sesame Street Muppet.
Yeah. And then I don't think you haven't seen Heated Rivalry, have you?
No.
Okay, one of the two main characters is autistic. Like
Ah.
canonically, author has said so, actor knew so.
Is the actor autistic?
I don't know. I don't
Fair.
know if he said one way or the other.
Fair.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And I think that's the hard part too, because sometimes there's a lot of debate on should you assume somebody's neurotype or take guesses at it, or is that private? I mean, would you do that with their sexuality or their gender identity or da da da? I think it's hard when we are so desperate to see ourselves represented to not make some guesses. Like I had just said about like Kurt and Prince, like
Yeah.
there's just so many things that resonate so deeply that I'd be surprised if the answer was no, they're not. But I also understand how it's uncomfortable to have people speculating about you.
Yeah. I mean, I also think like this is one of those things kind of like, hey, would you do this about their sexuality, whatever. I think people have forgotten the 2010s.
I think
Because
people
fuck
still
yeah.
do it about
Like
sexuality. Yeah.
people still do it about sexuality, but like especially back then, like that was huge all the time.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I'm not agreeing with it. I don't think it was a good thing to do. But like, yes, people would do that all of the time. I'm also personally of the opinion that like if you're going to play something on TV, I would like you to be secure enough in whatever identity that is to be out with that identity
Yeah.
for yourself. Like if you're not out, I don't want to force anyone out of the closet ever for any identity that they like. Part of it I also recognize is that like being black, being fat, like I hold identities that aren't hideable. Like they're
Yeah.
not
Yeah, if somebody
maskable, they're not
speculated.
right.
Yeah.
And so like that gives me a different relationship with the identities that I hold, I think. But I do think that like if you're feeling confident enough that you can portray this on TV, then
Mhm.
either deal with whatever criticism you're going to get for not being an out, whatever that identity is, gender
Yeah.
or neurotype, or be out. Like, I don't
Yeah.
really have a lot of like space for like, well, I want to be able to play it because I am it, but I don't want to have to take responsibility for being it and like whatever that comes with outside of. I want to keep my privilege in real life and have the privilege of playing this character and continue on that like character people who are out don't get these roles, right? Like and play into
Yeah.
that issue. And so like yeah, it's not my favorite. And I respect celebrities a lot more who only take roles with identities that they actually hold and are out about holding.
Two things popped into my head as you said it. Like the first is, say I went and deep dived and learned everything there is to know about OCD, and I'm someone who may have OCD. It's tough to know for sure. But would I go and do a presentation and be like, hey, I'm going to give you 6 hours of education on OCD, and then be upset if someone was like, well, I think Cade might have OCD because like you just did the 6 hour presentation and claims to know all this enough to teach us all about it.
Right.
And then the second thing was the whole Sia movie. Do you
Oh my
recall that at
god.
all?
Yes.
Where she wrote the movie, for listeners who don't know, she wrote a movie about an autistic, I believe that was like the main character and whole storyline was around this autistic young
Yeah, I think so.
woman, girl. And then she got real upset because people were saying your representation isn't good and this and that, and you know, why wouldn't you use an actual autistic actress? And apparently she had one hired and just thought it was like too intense for the person or something.
Yeah, my understanding, and I could be wrong, it was a long time ago, and
Yeah.
I struggle a little bit keeping up with celebrity news, but like my understanding was that it was essentially like I don't think that you're like fit to do this role,
Yeah.
which only enraged people more, which makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, and it really also drew into question, well, why are you not accommodating your
Right.
like the people you're hiring to do this? But I digress. So turns out a year or two later, after she struggled with some substances, she ended up, I believe, going into sobriety and then saying, well, you all bullied me so bad, but I'm actually autistic and da 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 da. Well, maybe if you had led with that, maybe if you had done some internal work before trying to like put out this huge movie about, I believe it was a non-speaking autistic was the like
Yeah.
character.
It also just goes to like it is possible to hurt your own community.
Oh
It
yeah.
is possible to be an ableist disabled person, a like racist black, brown, or Asian person to other races. Obviously, we can't be racist to white people, but like an anti-fat fatty, like all of
Mhm.
these identities exist, and is usually the default. Like it's usually that like if you have not done some amount of unlearning and relearning, that's what you're going to start out as, because like those are the baseline of what society teaches. And so like great, you're actually autistic, you also did harm.
Yep. And that needs to come with some actual accountability and apology and repair instead of just a quit bullying me, I hold that identity as well.
Right, like your identity is not your shield against accountability. And like it's hard too, because it's like even if she had been upfront about being autistic at the time,
It's, like, still, is that her story to tell about a non-speaking autistic person as she's
right.
out there singing and making music and talking? And I mean,
And
I
even
think
if
we would want to know a little more about her own experience before
right,
spending money to go watch that.
well, and even if it is her story to tell, if you tell it harmfully, like
Yeah.
I have my personal story is of being a like light-skinned black woman raised in the American South by a white lesbian. If I decided to make a movie out of my life and I cast a fucking white person as me, that's like not okay. Like that's still a problem.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing that gets and I'm sure we'll talk about this in a little bit more depth. But it's the same thing that happened with Kaylin, whatever the fuck, that like
Oh, from
white.
Love on the Spectrum.
No,
Yeah.
no, no. Is she on Love on the Spectrum?
I think season 1, and then they didn't invite her back because her, I forget how they phrased it to her, but essentially her type of autism is not the one they want to highlight.
Interesting.
Yeah.
At some point we'll have, yeah, because Love on the
Yeah.
Spectrum is definitely something that we should talk about.
Yeah. The new season comes out, or at this point when folks are hearing this, I think April 1st, so we'll have plenty to talk about.
Yeah, I've never seen it. I struggle with reality shows already, but there's something about it that doesn't sit right with my spirit.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's very interesting. I've watched all of it and lots of great people on the show. The way that they film it, though, yeah, and the
Yeah,
narratives they give sometimes, yeah.
interesting.
But that kind of leads us to our next question too, which is how do you find good autistic representation in media? I know it's out there, but don't know where to start.
Yeah.
And we've talked a little about some of the bad representation. I mean, you mentioned Community and Abed. As far as I know, the creator Dan Harmon is also autistic, but I think I don't know a lot about him, but I think it's arguable as to whether or not he's a good representation of an autistic person.
If Abed is a good representation?
Dan Harmon, the
Oh,
writer, because he also did Rick and Morty, which, again, I believe there's some canon around one or both of those two characters being autistic, and I haven't seen it, but I've heard about it, and I don't know if that would necessarily be great representation.
I think it depends on what you're trying to represent. Like, so
Mhm.
my feeling on representation is that like it should be in the hands of the community being represented, and representation of lots of kinds can be valuable. Like, it also doesn't work for representation to just be like, look at all of the bestest besties who ever
Yeah,
bested, um and set this standard of like all autistic people must be XYZ, all of this
yeah,
great stuff and never anything negative, like all these things. Like, I
mhm,
don't think that that works very well. I do think that like I like Ahmed. I could understand even how like the Rick and Morty guys could make people feel seen, which I think is important.
sure.
I think the hard part is that like it is going to be seen by people in the community and outside of it. And so that
Yeah,
is also a consideration. But I think if you have a wide enough like pool of representation, then you get to have your like everything's positive and joyful and whatever, and you're like there's some like kind of toxic bullshit. Like, this reminds me of the Christmas movie that came out with Kristen Stewart like a couple of years ago, where she's dating this girl and then they go to the parents' house for Christmas, and the girl that she's dating is like, my parents don't know I'm gay, I'm not out, like we can't talk about this, we can't do anything about it. And like that's, I think, a really important story to be
mhm.
had. Like, that movie itself has some issues, but like I think that we need representation like that, as well as representation of like a family, like a person coming out and everything being well. You know what I mean? Like, it's got to have
Yes.
all of it.
And I think that can be the hard part too, is where when a community doesn't have much representation, and this is very true for the trans community over the last 20 or so years, all the stories that come out, if they all follow the same storyline of like, for trans people, it's always we die or something tragic happens to us. So when you see like 10 movies like that, it really starts to cloud you as a trans or non-binary person and people who are cis. Everybody's kind of like, okay, so it's just tragic and you're going to get hurt or,
Right.
And
Yeah.
I think we were seeing that for autism where there was just like kind of one thing being portrayed, usually the like smart but bullied person, whether that's a kid or an adult. And I think we're moving away from that. Um, don't know a ton about Rick and Morty, but I believe whichever one is the older one struggles with substances. That's a very real autistic experience, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
I
The
think
older
it
one
should
is
be
Rick.
seen. Okay. Yeah.
Um and yeah, like I think it's important to try to capture the fullness of the experience, right? That like there's billions of autistic people, of queer people,
Mhm.
black people, like all these things, right? And so like you're not gonna have, it doesn't work to have one dimensional stories where it's only ever like one thing. And so yeah, like I I don't know, like again, it goes back to like, did the writers intentionally make them autistic? I don't know if Dan Harmon did or did not intentionally make Rick and Morty autistic. I've seen most episodes of that show. I don't remember them ever saying it outright that they either one of them is or is not. Uh, but I do think that like having characters that are going to speak to something,
Mhm.
right? Um, And so, like, I think I mentioned earlier, like Lilo from Lilo and Stitch, what is one of those that like a lot of people are like, oh yeah, like everything about her, look at her, she's fucking autistic. Um, and that's just not where media was at the time that that movie came out.
Yeah.
To own that, and I doubt it was in anyone's mind, but I also think that that's indicative of the way that autism has existed for a while. Is like,
Mhm.
um, a lot of people wouldn't have classified a lot of things as autistic that are, um,
Yeah.
and so within that, right, I really like Lilo. I really like a lot of the kind of like, oh, like this weird individual character. I will say Asia and I are watching The Pit right now. Um,
Okay.
and there is
It's
a
like the
character.
ER type show.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like ER, but like it's not ER. It's a little like ER. It's also like 24 because each episode is 1 hour of the shift. So
Oh,
you watch an hour
that's
of the
cool.
show and it's 1 hour of shift. Um, in this hospital. And the main reason that it gets the ER stuff is because Noah Weil is in both. Um,
Oh, okay.
yeah. And so, but it's not like actually super, super similar.
They
More or
handle
less
medical
so.
things.
Yeah, like more or
Yeah.
less so than any other like medical show, right?
Yeah.
But in it, there is a character, Dr. Mel King, who has an autistic sister. And there is every sign in the world that Mel is going to identify that she is also autistic at some point. Like,
Cool.
she shows a lot of like autistic traits. And there's an episode in the first season where she gets a patient who's autistic, or no, someone else, Dr. Langdon, gets a patient who's autistic and is like, I can't figure out what the fuck to do with him. He won't answer any of my questions. Like, this is da 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 da. And so Mel's like, can I try? And he's like, yeah. And so she goes in and she like turns the light off and like closes the like little things and closes all the doors because it's loud in an ER, and like basically meets the person's sensory needs and then asks them about like, how did you get hurt? Well, I'm doing this thing, and okay, so it's important to you to get back to doing your competition. Like, tell me some about that. Like, okay, and is able to like meet this person's needs and then teaches Dr. Langdon how to do it. And so
Cool.
I think right now Dr. Mel King is one of my favorite autistic like role models or like representation, because it's really different feeling to me than like The Good Doctor, where it's like,
Oh,
okay, and I am like quite a like stereotypical white male, like, you know, genius, but like disabled, like, you know, like all of that
mhm.
kind of stuff. Mel is just a person, an autistic person, likely, who cares for other autistic people and other people and like is just doing her job and is good at it in some places and struggles with it in others. And like,
It's like
I
very
think that kind of
humanized.
representation is my favorite. Yeah,
Yeah, where it's like a full human, not just a trope that it's following.
exactly.
That's
Exactly.
cool.
Yeah.
Not that this is like, if someone's asking this to show to their children or something, this is not who I would recommend. But as you're talking about that too, House is one of those, like, been around for a long time, and you cannot convince me that character's not autistic. You
Yeah.
know? And it shows a side of autism that doesn't really get talked about. So
It's
that would
interesting.
be,
Asia and I are
yeah.
also watching that because like The Pit
Oh,
comes out each week, and so we needed a show to watch in between. Um, and so we're also rewatching House right now, and yeah, it's we just restarted. I haven't watched it in years, and it's just very interesting because yeah, there's the like, and I think especially again like we need complex autistic characters.
mhm.
It doesn't work to have every autistic character be hyper empathetic and da 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 and all of these things that like on the pendulum, right? Like there were all these kind of negative views of autism. And I think a lot of people early in their like autism advocacy journey are trying to like swing it, but
Yeah.
they go too far. And so it ends up over here of like, we don't have no empathy. We have all the empathy ever. And it's like, well, no, there are autistic people on every single inch of this pendulum,
Mhm.
right? Who hit anywhere along that line. And no one of them is better or worse than another one.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I think that there's it's really important to have like complex and harder to love autistic characters, as well as like Mel is also just my favorite character in the pit, period. Like she's just great. Um and so yeah, I think that there's room for all of them, and all of them are important.
Yeah, before we hit record, we were talking about the residents, which I couldn't remember the name of, and like Uzo, like the main character. I don't think they ever say is autistic, but
I don't
that's
think
like an
so.
easy to love autistic, lots of autistic traits, and
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, for
it's nice
sure.
to see those. So
I
good
agree.
representation. I think you can kind of find it because many characters are like autistic coded. It just depends
Yeah.
what you're looking for and what would represent you or whoever you're hoping to show it to or read it to. There's a lot of books now that have autistic characters.
Yeah, I also think that there's like nothing actually wrong with finding a part of a character that you really resonate with, even if
Mhm.
they're not autistic, even if like they're not canonically autistic, or like whatever. First of all, make a headcanon.
Yeah.
Like make an
Yeah, fan
AU.
fiction
Someone
exists.
has written a fic of it, I promise you.
Yeah. Oh,
Um
yeah.
we're getting to the point where like in the same way as what is it, Rule 24? Uh
34, I
or
think. Yeah.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah, yeah. We're gonna have to have like a fucking rule, something else, because whatever the I was trying to think of, I'm so bad at chemistry. The like gold, because is AU, right?
Yep.
And then whatever the atomic number for that is, rule whatever that number is that there is definitely a fic out there of of that character but autistic.
I totally agree, and I think you should make that saying a thing for sure because
Yeah.
it's so true. And it goes back to that piece about Dan Harmon as well. Like when we're autistic and we're writing, can we not write autistic? Like, is it possible to not write an autistic character unless you're consciously making choices to take away autistic traits from them? Because the way we default write humans, like, it'd be very interesting to see what that would look like.
Yeah, I think it's hard. Like it also gets down into like in general, it's the same way that like when my clients are like, "Oh, well, is it normal for like a non-autistic person to do that?" I'm like, "I don't know. I'm not a non-autistic person.
Yeah.
Like I'm just not autistic, and I don't have that brain, and I never have." And so, I can tell you what like other autistic people have told me.
Mm-hmm.
But I can't speak directly to an autistic experience. And I think
Yeah.
that like in the same way that I believe that like we should write our experience and not write non our experience. So like I don't really love it or find it to be helpful when like, for example, white people try to write specifically a black character in a black like situation. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's your main character, that's what your story is all about, blah blah blah. Um and I follow like a really good sensitivity reader who talks a lot about that. Um but I also think that in that same way, like it doesn't really make sense. I'm not going to write a character, all of my characters are going to have some neurodivergent traits, because like that's just the only way that I know how a brain functions.
Yeah.
Like I don't even know that I would be able to write a character well that like could see in their mind's eye, because I'm aphantasic and I can't, and I don't know what that's like.
Same.
And so like, oh, and they vividly saw like that's the other part, is like my writing is not very visual because I don't really know how to like, I'm not thinking in that way. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, there's just, I think that we need to radically accept like our experience holds the limits of what we can then export into the world in
Yeah.
whatever medium we choose.
And I think we didn't talk about this one yet, but I feel like it's called Heartbreak High with Chloe Hayden, who is actually an autistic person, was an autistic YouTuber for a long time. That character, I believe, is written by an holistic writer or writer's team, but they took her feedback to adapt and let her have some like liberty in how she acted things out and what she would ad lib, which makes that a little bit more of an authentic autistic character versus if it had been written kind of in an holistic vacuum.
Yeah, I watched the first season of that. Chloe Hayden had some drama. Being just fucking white autistics. You know, I don't even remember what was happening, but it was something.
Oh, no.
Um, but yeah, I do definitely like think that there was it. there was like a scene in one of the episodes where she like gets really overwhelmed, like um sensory overwhelm kind of thing, and like that felt very realistic to like
Mm.
experiences that I've had or that clients of mine that have had or friends of mine or things like that. So I think that that is one of the powers of having like someone who's actually autistic and who's actually experienced things. It's the same way as like someone who's been drunk before is going to act drunk better than someone who's not. Someone
Yeah.
who has tripped acid is going to act tripping acid better. Someone who's been pregnant is going to act pregnant better. Like you get things out of having lived something that those who have not lived it don't have.
And it's interesting too. I would love to kind of compare actors who are autistic versus allistic in the same role. What would that look like? Are there just some inherently innate communication differences or body movements? Or because the other person that comes to mind, the character is not canonically autistic, I don't think, but have you ever seen Prison Break with Wentworth Miller?
Yeah.
So Wentworth Miller came out as bi, and I'm like, that's awesome, queer representation. And then later came out as autistic, and I'm like, that's doubly awesome.
Yeah.
But that character, like, I bet, going back and watching clips, you'd be like, oh, outside of the whole concept of the show breaking out of prison and strategizing and all those things being like appealing to our maybe sense of expectation, sensitivity, and planning and structure, I wonder what else is there, if you go back and watch.
Yeah. Well, I can let you know because Asia and I are thinking about rewatching that at some point soon.
Such a good one.
It is a very good one. And we thought of it because the guy who plays Wentworth Miller's brother in that, who's like the one in prison, is in an episode of House that we just watched. And so we were like, oh, we should watch that. We haven't watched that in a while.
God, I love when you watch something and it's like, oh my gosh, that's that person from all these other things.
Oh my gosh. And so like I just watched the ER for the first time, which is what led us to watching The Pit. And that show is real good for it. Like it has more than half of the main cast of West Wing in it at some point or another. There's like just so many different things, but there is
So
in ER one of the characters has ADHD, and it's interesting to watch too because like that show I think starts in like 94, 95, something like that. And so like this is the really early 2000s when this character is on. She's like an intern and she has ADHD, and actually Noah Wild's character is like, you cannot take Adderall, like you can't take a stimulant, like you need to figure out how to be a doctor without needing that, like that you can't be a doctor and need that, which is really funny because his character later has a fucking addiction problem. But so she tries to like figure out how to like be a doctor without her meds, and she's like scrambling and like just fucking ADHD. And it's just so interesting like how far some of that has come and how far some of that has not come at all,
Yeah, absolutely. And I bet this is one where we could probably talk for hours on this. Maybe we'll have to do it a part 2 sometime, because we didn't even touch on like fantasy media, science fiction, all the places where openly and out autistic people hang out and create.
Yeah. And yet I feel like I almost would struggle more to figure out, because I don't know that there's as many like canonically autistic characters in those spaces. I think that people are just writing like what they feel and then aren't really putting that label there.
Absolutely. It probably goes back to what we're saying, where like when you have a certain experience, it kind of translates into your art. Yeah. Well, we are going to wrap up here and we'll move over to Upping the Ante, which is our bonus segment over on Patreon. We're planning to talk about ways autistic people use their platforms for evil, and that should be interesting, especially if we go the love on the spectrum route and talk about some of those folks.
Yeah.
So thanks for joining us, and we'll see you over there. You can expect new episodes weekly on Tuesdays. You can find me at Cryptid Learns and Sabrina at Radical Insights Consulting on Facebook or Instagram, or at a .com at the end of either of those for our websites. You can follow the podcast on Facebook or Instagram at Aces Up Your Sleeve Pod. That way you can interact with us and you can see when new episodes release. If you have any questions for us, visit neurokink.org/AUYS and send it our way. We're going to jump over to Patreon to record Upping the Ante. It's over at www.patreon.com/Aces Up Your Sleeve Podcast. But you can also listen to it wherever you stream once you join our Patreon. We'll see you there.